Whether you're homeschooling or sending your children to a public or private school, you can assume that your child is going to be studying anywhere from 6 to 10 different subjects at a time. And if you are sending them to some institution, you might assume that those subjects are going to be divided amongst many different teachers. Whereas if you're homeschooling, you might expect that you're going to be teaching all of those subjects by yourself. So one of the most common questions that we'll get as homeschooling parents is, how do you manage all of those different subjects, especially if you have multiple children? So today for our Q&A session, we're going to be discussing how do we manage all of these subjects that we're trying to teach our children as we homeschool them. Now, this is a very legitimate question because even if you just have one child, you're still going to be trying to teach math, reading, writing, some form of a science. You might be having an art class somewhere in there. You can add on top of that extracurricular activities like soccer, chess clubs, swimming, anything of that nature, and this could easily become overwhelming. Now, when you add on top of that multiple children at different levels who are now studying various different subjects, that can seem like a whole lot. So today we're going to try and give you some tips on how you can manage your time and manage all of these different subjects so that you don't get burnt out and you still give your children a quality level of education. First thing you want to do is make a list and start to prioritize those subjects that you want to teach your child, because if you try to teach them everything, you're easily going to get overwhelmed. And so there's so much that you could possibly want to teach your child, from writing, reading, math, arithmetic. You have all of the different sciences from chemistry, biology, astronomy. You could look at history, religious studies, art. You might have more technical things that you want to teach your child, from electronics or robots. Add on top of that any extracurricular activities that you might want your child engaged in, such as chess, swimming, climbing, horseback riding, fencing, or anything else of that nature. And this can start to consume a lot of time. So make that list and prioritize from top to bottom of the subjects that these are essential, they need to be done every day, all the way down to those subjects that, well, maybe if we got them in once a week, then that would be sufficient. So you might find that reading, writing, math, and religious studies are essential subjects that need to be taught every single day. And again, that might vary from family to family. You might find another family that prioritizes the sciences, or maybe they prioritize the arts, and that's totally fine. This is the beauty of homeschooling, in that we're able to cater the curriculum based upon the needs and the interest of our individual children. So once you have that list of subjects that you want to teach and they're prioritized, you want to make that reflect in the schedule that you create for your homeschooling. You're a human being and you're only going to have a certain amount of time in the day. And whatever you spend time doing on something, that's taking away from time doing something else. So if you have that reading, writing, and math, again, are your priorities, make sure that you have designated slots for those throughout your calendar of the day of what you're going to do. For those subjects that aren't as much of a high priority, you're going to want to try and schedule them a little bit more spaced out in your weekly calendar. Another reason why you want to prioritize all of these subjects is because things can and will go wrong. And so sometimes you have a lesson that normally takes 20 minutes, but either because your kid's giving you a hard time or they're just having difficulty understanding, it takes them 2 hours. And so if you're taking all of that time here, you're going to have to compensate over here. So maybe that art lesson that really isn't as essential, you might want to move that till next week. By prioritizing these subjects, you're going to know that if all else fails, at least I'm going to get these essential core subjects done for the day. The next tip that I'll give you is that if and when possible, you want to have all of your assignments printed out or ready to go from the night before. I can tell you that for myself personally, this was always a huge help when my wife would have all of my stuff ready to go beforehand, so I could just look at my stack of things to do and I could get it done 1, 2, 3 really quickly, as opposed to running around, looking through the books, trying to find where I was, preparing the material for that day, which can be really time consuming. So once you've prioritized all of your subjects and you know what is the most important and what is least important, make sure that you make a schedule. It's so much easier when you know what you're doing day to day, as opposed to every morning waking up and saying, all right, what do I have to do today? Which leads me to my next point, which is to try and get your husband involved in the homeschooling. I say husband because it seems that 9 times out of 10, the people that are at the forefront of educating their children at home are mainly mothers. That might not be the case. Maybe your husband really is involved in homeschooling their children. I'd love to meet more people like that, but they definitely are rare. If you can convince your husband to take a little bit more active role in homeschooling your children, even if it's just a few subjects a day for 10 to 15 minutes at a time, this is going to take a huge load off of your back and it's going to assist you in managing all of these different subjects. Another thing you can try, if and when possible, is to teach one subject to multiple children at a time. It's kind of like kill 2 birds with 1 stone, teach multiple children with 1 book. Now, this might be difficult based upon their ages and the subject matter, but there's definitely some things that are easier than others. Art is definitely something that you could do with multiple children at one time. Also, any type of athletic activity. A lot of times in our house, when our children are listening to audio lectures, we find that all of them will sit around and learn at the same time as well. Another practice, if you can master this, is going to be very helpful, is to find activities that each individual child can do on their own while you have to focus on teaching one of the other children. For example, you might have one child whose reading level is really high, and you might set them aside for an hour and say, here, I want you to read 10, 15, or however many pages is suitable for them, while you work with another child that needs a lot more attention, for example, in learning their early math facts. The last piece of advice that I'll give you is, if possible, try to have a lot of snacks and pre-made meals ready for your children. Because if you're trying to manage and juggle all of these different subjects, and at any given time, one of those kids comes around and says, I'm hungry, you really want to have something that you can give them real quick instead of breaking your momentum, breaking your consistency, running into the kitchen for the next hour to 45 minutes trying to cook everybody a meal. So by no means are all of these tips going to make homeschooling an absolute breeze and you're going to save all of the time in the world, but we do hope that these pieces of advice do help you manage your time and make things easier as you homeschool your children. Thanks for stopping by and checking out another episode of our question and answer series for AbiHomeschoolsToo's YouTube page. If this is your first time, we'd love to have you subscribe. You can also check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're here every Mondays talking about general advice for homeschoolers, and on Fridays, we're here with our Q&A session. If you have any questions that you'd like for us to answer, please leave those down in the comment section below. Again, thanks for coming by, and we'll see you next week.